Today, we're about to attempt what Bugatti think is impossible.
Can't do that in a garage. There's just a few places in the world with the right equipment and only a few people in the world with the right training to be able to do that.
Big news is moving to the car world, and it is not about a normal new car launch. Reports say a major Chinese car company may be about to do something that has never happened before in the history of supercars. The company appears ready to hand over one of its newest, most expensive hypercars, a machine worth close to $3 million, to a YouTube creator, so he can rebuild it in front of millions of viewers. The man at the center of this story is Mat Armstrong, a car restoration YouTuber from England who has spent years bringing wrecked supercars back to life. For most of the car industry's history, this kind of move would sound impossible. Big car brands guard their most special and most expensive cars very closely. If one of these cars gets damaged, the owner is usually told to send it back to the factory, where trained staff use secret tools, secret software, and parts that nobody else can buy. This keeps prices high and choices low for owners. But now, it looks like one company may be ready to break that old rule, at least for a short time, and let the whole world watch what happens. Why would any car company trust its most expensive creation to someone outside the factory? And why would they pick Mat Armstrong out of everyone? To answer these questions, we need to look at two big stories that are now crashing into each other. The first story is about the car itself, a brand new hypercar built by BYD, a Chinese company that used to be known mainly for cheap electric cars, but has now built something that can compete with Ferrari and Bugatti. The second story is about the man, Mat Armstrong, and how he became one of the biggest names in car restoration by fixing cars that big brands said could never be fixed outside their own walls. Mat's name has already caused real tension with at least two major car makers. Each time he takes on a new project involving an expensive, high-tech car, those companies seem to get a little nervous. Because Mat keeps proving that their cars can be repaired without their help, often for far less money than the official price. If BYD really does hand over a damaged version of its new hypercar Mat, it would not just be a fun video idea. It could send a message to the whole car industry that maybe these expensive machines are not as impossible to fix as manufacturers want people to believe. It could also be a smart move for BYD. The company is still fairly new to the world of hypercars, and getting millions of car fans to watch one of its cars survive a tough repair, carried out by someone with no inside help, could be a powerful way to prove that BYD's engineering is strong and well-built. Before we get into what this possible team-up could mean, it helps to understand both halves of the story on their own. First, we will look at BYD's surprising new hypercar, the records it has already broken, and what it says about where the car industry is heading. After that, we will follow Mat Armstrong's journey, starting from his early years on a BMX bike all the way to becoming one of YouTube's most famous car builders, and the huge projects, including a battle with Bugatti, that brought him to this point. Once both stories are clear, the idea of BYD trusting Mat with its newest hypercar will make a lot more sense, and you'll understand exactly why this story has so many people talking. IT takes a lot of confidence for a car company to build some of the best batteries in the world, and then turn around and build a hypercar that can challenge the biggest names in the business. That is exactly what BYD has done. At the 2026 Beijing Auto Show, BYD's high-end brand, called Yangwang, showed off a brand new, limited edition hypercar named the U9 Extreme. For years, BYD was known mainly for making affordable electric cars. These were not flashy or exciting cars, but they offered good technology at a fair price, and they helped BYD become one of the biggest electric car makers in the world. But things have changed. While many old, well-known car companies have struggled to turn their supercars into electric models, BYD quietly built one of the most advanced and most expensive hypercars ever made, and aimed it straight at brands like Ferrari and Bugatti. The U9 Extreme is not just a fancy concept car, made only to look good in photos. It is a real, working hypercar with a price tag of about $2.76 million, making it one of the most expensive cars BYD has ever built. Only 30 of these cars will ever be made, which makes it extremely rare. To put that into perspective, there are car collectors who own more than one car worth that much in their private garages, while most people never even see one in person. Under its bold, eye-catching body, the U9 Extreme hides some very serious technology. It uses a 1,200-volt electrical system, which is much higher than what most electric cars use today, and has 4 separate electric motors, one for each wheel. Together, these motors produce more than 3,000 horsepower. For comparison, most fast sports cars on the road today have somewhere between 300 and 700 horsepower. So 3,000 horsepower puts this car in a totally different league. This is not a car that BYD plans to keep locked away in a museum or only show off at car shows. BYD's chairman, Wang Chuanfu, personally handed over the very first U9 Extreme to a customer at the Beijing Auto Show. Even more surprising, it was reported that every single one of the 30 cars had already been sold before the show even opened to the public. This shows that serious car buyers, the kind of people who usually buy from Ferrari, Lamborghini, or Bugatti, are now paying close attention to what BYD is doing. This was not always the picture people had of BYD. For a long time, the brand was seen as a maker of practical, low-cost electric cars for everyday drivers, not as a name that belonged in the same sentence as the world's most famous sports car makers. The U9 Extreme is BYD's clearest sign, yet that this is changing fast. By building a car with this much power, this much technology, and this high a price, BYD is telling the world that it wants to be taken seriously, not just in the world of normal cars, but in the small, exclusive world of true hypercars as well. For wealthy collectors who already own cars from Ferrari, Lamborghini, or Bugatti, the U9 Extreme suddenly becomes something they cannot easily ignore, simply because of just how rare, how fast, and how capable it already is. As we will see next, the numbers BYD has already put up on the track back up that bold claim in a very real way, with performance figures that have shocked even some of the most established names in the business. The performance numbers behind the U9 Extreme are just as impressive as its price tag and rarity, and they are backed up by real official tests, not just claims from BYD's marketing team. In September 2025, the U9 Extreme made history by becoming the first production electric car ever to complete a lap of the famous Nürburgring Nordschleife racetrack in Germany in under 7 minutes. This track, often called the green hell by drivers because it is so long, twisty, and demanding, has been used for decades as the ultimate test for fast cars. Many legendary supercars have tried and failed to break the 7-minute mark, so doing it in an electric car was seen as a huge milestone for the entire industry. The exact time recorded was 6 minutes and 59.157 seconds, just barely under the 7-minute line, but enough to make history. Soon after, the U9 Extreme set another record. This time, it reached an officially measured top speed of 496.22 kilometers per hour, which is close to 308 miles per hour. This number is not just fast. It is faster than the previous top speed records held by two of the most famous hypercar names in the world, Bugatti and Koenigsegg. For years, these two brands have been locked in their own battle to build the fastest production car on the planet, often trading the record back and forth between themselves. Now, a Chinese electric brand that most people had never associated with speed records had quietly beaten both of them. This made the U9 Extreme one of the fastest production cars ever built, and instantly turned Yangwang into a name that serious car fans need to pay attention to. But BYD did not stop with just one new hypercar. Alongside the U9 Extreme, the company also showed off another striking vehicle at the Beijing Auto Show, a concept car called the Qingbao Formula X. This car looks like it belongs on a racetrack rather than a public road. Its design takes inspiration from shapes found in nature, combined with very aggressive aerodynamic features. The kind of sharp edges, wings, and vents that are designed to cut through air as efficiently as possible and create extra grip at high speed. While the Formula X is still a concept car, meaning it is not for sale yet, it sends a clear message about where BYD wants to go next. The company does not just want to build one impressive hypercar and stop there. It wants to compete in both worlds at once. The world of road-going hypercars that rich collectors buy and drive on special occasions, and the world of track-focused performance machines built purely for speed and handling. Taken together, the U9 Extreme and the Qingbao Formula X show that BYD's move into the hypercar world is not a one-time stunt. It looks like the start of a much bigger plan. And that bigger plan raises an interesting question. If BYD is serious about challenging brands like Ferrari and Bugatti, how does it plan to handle the kind of problems that come with owning a hypercar? Problems like crashes, repairs, and the huge costs that come with fixing such complex machines? These are not small details. For buyers spending millions of dollars on a single car, knowing what happens if something goes wrong can matter just as much as the top speed or the horsepower number. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn, one that leads us away from car shows and straight into the workshop of a YouTuber from England. Here is where the story gets really interesting. What if, instead of keeping a damaged U9 Extreme locked away inside a factory, far from public view, BYD decided to do something no major hypercar maker has ever done before? What if the company handed a wrecked version of its new hypercar to a well-known car YouTuber and let millions of people watch every single step of the repair, including the mistakes, the dead ends, and the moments of success? If that idea sounds familiar, it is because one person has already spent years fighting very similar battles, just on a smaller scale, against some of the biggest and most protective car manufacturers in the world. That person is Mat Armstrong. Before getting into the details of BYD's possible plan, it helps to understand who Mat Armstrong actually is and why his name causes a bit of unease inside the offices of some very famous car brands. On the surface, Mat is just a guy with a camera and a workshop in Leicester, England. He buys badly damaged cars, often cars that insurance companies have written off as total losses, and he tries to bring them back to life. He films the whole process, good and bad, and shares on YouTube. Millions of people watch these videos every week. What makes Mat different from many other car YouTubers is the scale of the cars he chooses to work on. While many creators focus on cheap, everyday cars, Mat has built a reputation for taking on projects that most people, including some experts, believe were simply too far gone to save. He has worked on crashed Lamborghinis, badly damaged McLarens, and cars that have been sitting in floodwater for so long that their electronics were completely ruined. Each time, Mat and his small team find a way to bring these cars back, often using clever workarounds instead of expensive official parts. This pattern has not gone unnoticed by car manufacturers. When a hugely expensive, highly advanced car gets damaged, manufacturers usually expect the story to end one of two ways. Either the car gets sent back to the factory for an official, very costly repair, or it gets quietly scrapped and forgotten. What manufacturers do not expect and do not always welcome is a third option, where the car ends up in Mat Armstrong's workshop, gets fixed without official help, and then gets shown to millions of people online, often looking and driving just as well as before. For some brands, this is uncomfortable because it raises a question they would rather not answer in public. If a small team working out a regular workshop in England can fix one of these cars, why does the official factory repair cost so much more? It is a simple question, but it is one with very expensive consequences for everyone involved on both sides. This tension between Mat and big car manufacturers did not happen overnight. It built up slowly, project by project, as Mat moved from small, low-cost repairs to bigger and more expensive cars. Each one raised his profile a little more and put him a little more on the radar of the brands that build these machines. To really understand how he reached a point where a major hypercar maker might trust him with one of its newest, most advanced creations, we need to go back to the very beginning of his story, long before cars were even his main focus. We need to start with a different kind of vehicle entirely, one with two wheels instead of four, that long before Mat Armstrong became known for fixing crashed supercars. His life revolved around a very different kind of machine, the BMX bike. From the time he was old enough to hold a wrench, Mat learned how to fix things by watching his father, Tony, who worked as a mechanic. Cars were always somewhere in the background of his childhood, since his dad worked on them for a living, and Mat picked up small bits of knowledge just by being around the garage. But as a kid and a teenager, his real passion was not cars, it was BMX riding. As Mat got older, his BMX skills grew along with his passion, and he eventually became a professional BMX rider. This meant traveling around the United Kingdom to take part in competitions, often with sponsorship support from well-known brands in the sport. On the surface, this might sound like a glamorous lifestyle, but the reality was far more basic. Much of Mat's time as a professional rider was spent living out of a van, moving from event to event. Money was often tight, even with sponsorships. So Mat learned to fix his own bikes whenever something broke, simply because paying someone else to do it was not always an option. This habit of fixing things himself, out of necessity rather than choice, would later become one of the most important skills in his life, even though he did not know it at the time. Unfortunately, professional BMX riding came with a harsh, very physical cost. The sport is extremely demanding on the body, involving big jumps, hard landings, and constant risk of injury. Over time, riders push their bodies again and again, and sooner or later, the body reaches its limit. For Matt, that limit arrived after he suffered a serious injury. This was not just one small accident, but the result of years of physical strain that had built up, including several broken bones and torn ligaments. The damage was serious enough that, in his early 20s, Matt had to face a difficult truth. He could no longer continue competing in BMX at a professional level. For many people, having to leave a sport they love at such a young age would feel like the end of something important. And in many ways, it was. Matt suddenly found himself without the career he had built his life around, with no clear plan for what would come next. But instead of giving up or feeling stuck, Matt turned back to something that had always been part of his life, even if it had not been his main focus, cars. His love for cars had never really gone away. It had simply been sitting in the background while BMX took center stage. With BMX no longer an option, cars naturally became his new main focus. At this point, Matt did not have a clear plan to become a famous YouTuber or to take on multi-million-dollar restoration projects. He simply started doing what felt natural, working on cars and sharing what he was doing with anyone who was interested. He began posting car restoration videos on YouTube, slowly teaching himself new skills along the way. There was no formal training, no mechanic certificate, just hands-on practice, plenty of trial and error, and a willingness to learn from his mistakes in front of the camera. This humble, learn-as-you-go beginning would soon lead to a turning point that changed the direction of his life completely, all because of one badly damaged car that belonged to someone very close to him, his own girlfriend. The turning point in Mat Armstrong's career came from an unexpected source, a car crash involving someone close to him. His girlfriend, Hannah, was involved in an accident in her Audi TT, and the damage was serious enough that the insurance company declared the car a total loss, meaning it was officially considered not worth repairing. In one of his early videos, Matt explained the situation to his small audience, describing how Hannah's car had been badly damaged and that the rear wheel had completely snapped off in the crash. For most people, a total loss like this would be the end of the story. The car would be sold for scrap or parts, and that would be that. But Matt saw it differently. Rather than letting the car disappear, he bought the damaged Audi TT himself for just £600, a tiny amount of money compared to what the car was worth before the crash. Then he did something that would shape the rest of his career. He filmed himself trying to repair it, step by step, mistakes and all. Looking back, this early video was far from polished. It did not have the smooth editing or confident narration that Matt's later videos would have. But that rough, honest style turned out to be exactly what made it work. Viewers could tell that what they were watching was real, not a performance. They were watching someone genuinely figure things out as he went, sharing both his successes and his struggles openly. Slowly, more and more people started watching, drawn in by this honesty. At this stage in his life, Matt was not making enough money from YouTube alone to support himself. He worked at a vehicle tuning company, and on top of that, he also took on food delivery jobs to help pay the bills. Every spare moment he had outside of these jobs went into rebuilding cars and creating new videos. It was a demanding schedule, juggling regular work with the time-consuming process of restoring vehicles and filming everything along the way. But Matt kept pushing forward. His big breakthrough moment came when a well-known automotive journalist and former television host noticed one of Matt's restoration projects and reacted to it. This kind of attention from someone respected in the car world acted like a spotlight, suddenly pointing thousands of new viewers toward Matt's channel. People who had never heard of him before started checking out his videos, and many of them stayed to watch more. Not long after this boost in attention, Matt released a video featuring a Bentley restoration project. This video did more than just attract views. It brought him his first major sponsorship deal, a clear sign that brands were starting to see real value in partnering with his channel. By the end of 2019, Matt had reached an important milestone. His income from YouTube had grown to the point where it had actually surpassed what he was earning from his regular jobs combined. This gave him the confidence to make a big decision. He left his day job behind completely and committed to becoming a full-time content creator, putting all of his time and energy into car restoration videos. From this point on, Matt was no longer just someone with a hobby and a camera. He was building a real career, and like many ambitious creators, he began dreaming of finding one big project, something so dramatic and so unusual that it could capture the attention of the entire internet. That opportunity arrived in early 2024 in the form of one very famous, very badly damaged Rolls-Royce. The car that gave Mat Armstrong his biggest project yet was not just any Rolls-Royce. It had a famous history before it ever reached Matt's workshop. The car had previously belonged to Marcus Rashford, the football star known for playing for Manchester United and representing England on the international stage. Rashford had originally purchased the Rolls-Royce for around £350,000, which was already a huge amount of money for most people, but he did not stop there. He went on to spend an additional £150,000 on extensive custom modifications from a company called Mansory, well known for high-end luxury car upgrades. These upgrades included carbon fiber body panels, a fully custom leather interior, and many other luxury touches that took the car well beyond its already impressive standard form. Then disaster struck. The Rolls-Royce was hit from behind at high speed in a serious crash. The impact crushed the rear section of the car, bent its chassis, the main structural frame that everything else is built around, and completely destroyed the rear suspension system. This was not a minor bump that could be quickly patched up. It was the kind of damage that often signals the end of a car's life. After the insurance process was completed, the badly wrecked vehicle was put up for sale. This is where Mat Armstrong stepped in, buying the wrecked Rolls-Royce for £185,000. What followed turned into one of the biggest and most demanding projects of Matt's career. Over a period of 8 months, he documented the entire restoration process across 23 separate videos, giving his audience a detailed look at every stage of the rebuild. As the project went on, it became clear that the damage was far worse than anyone had first realized. The rear subframe, an important structural part of the car, had been bent by 14 degrees, a serious amount of distortion for a piece that needs to be precisely aligned. The carbon fiber trunk lid had shattered into more than 40 separate pieces, turning what should have been one solid panel into a puzzle of broken fragments. On top of the physical damage, the car's electronics presented their own massive challenge. This Rolls-Royce contained more than 100 separate electronic control units, small